Hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
So we're talking to Jeremy Wolff. You just addressed the conference attendees here at the United Patients Group Medical Cannabis Conference. We really appreciate you being here, and
Thank you.
you have an impressive background. So, I mean, you're known as a writer, an artist, a photographer. You've done some of the most iconic rock album art that's out there with the Spin Doctors and various things. But it's interesting to me how your life and your professional work and your personal interest has drawn you into the world of cannabis as well. But you're taking it in a more cerebral direction.
Right.
As you mentioned to me before we started rolling the camera, you're not a medical doctor, you're not a scientist, but it sounds like you have a very important agenda really in getting the word out about cannabis in general. And I know that you contributed to the first book, which was the pot book,
Right.
and you helped to contribute to one of the chapters there.
Right.
Thoughts on pot, which
Right.
I thought was clever. But the part 2 is coming out at the beginning of next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a new book on cannabis and spirituality.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I come to a conference like this, and it's fascinating to sit there and hear all these people with in a field that is potentially derided because of the subject matter,
Right.
With cannabis and the stoner stereotypes. You come to these conferences and people are so smart and so buttoned up and so scientific and clear and dedicated. I come in, sort of as an outsider. My wife is a doctor, Julie Holland, and she's, through her I've been exposed to a lot of this world and have learned quite a bit. But I do feel like I'm kind of a little bit of an outsider as far as the scientific information. But on the other hand, as I've worked as an artist for in some form, as a writer or musician, lots of any creative endeavor I can get
Right.
into to avoid a real job. I've been very aware of cannabis and creativity, particularly.
Okay.
I mean, that in my own work, it was kind of it sort of became unavoidable to see that it was useful as a tool. Even when I was writing articles for the Wall Street Journal, and I would I had a deadline and I couldn't put the article down for 2 weeks to get a fresh look at it.
Right.
Cannabis could aid me in just proofreading, and simply, it allowed me to see that I used the in a sentence, as well as ideas.
So that's
and
interesting.
So it took, but because of the negative stereotypes, it really took, it's like, okay, this article it's actually in the Wall Street Journal with 1 million circulation, that must show that actually this tool helps.
Right.
And the same with artwork that I made, and like, okay, if it was on the cover of this magazine,
Right.
it was kind of like my self-doubt that I had to
Right.
be convinced by the sort of the mass media
Right.
success of something to show that the tool worked.
Well, I think that would be actually, a lot of people, because of the stigma surrounding cannabis, it would be hard for them to understand that actually cannabis was helping you to get clarity
Right.
and to help you to be focused, instead of the opposite, which is a stereotype of, the lazy stoner on the couch, not able to function for, however many hours
Right.
or whatnot.
Well, one of the things I talked about was like that, how there really aren't those positive, role models. I, said that, like, for alcohol, I mean, we do have, plenty of role models of the messy, sloppy drunk like Barney in The Simpsons, but for every one of those, you also have the Napa wine connoisseur, and you have James Bond with his martini, and
Right.
and there really isn't anything like that in the cannabis world. So we grow
true.
up with that, and it's really hard to to break through the stereotypes that come with it.
Well, I think it's important then that your voice is amongst those others that are here this weekend at the conference that might be, again, delivering more of the scientific or the research-based side of medical cannabis story.
Right.
But you
And
you
just
are
to
bringing,
normalize it.
yeah, you're bringing a very, very critical point home to the masses, really. And I mean, I know that you talk a lot even about, the evolution of narcotics and pharmaceuticals and how they've really developed into, marijuana. Cannabis is on the same schedule by the federal government as drugs like heroin and other, highly harmful and addictive substances.
And
What are
it's,
your thoughts on
well,
that?
I mean, it's gotten to the point that it's completely schizophrenic that by federal law, it's still a Schedule 1 drug. Meanwhile, there are all these states which are, legalizing recreational and medical use. In California, 20 years of medical use, where there's, thousands and thousands of examples of it being used medicinally.
Yes.
That you can't put that in the same brain space as that it's, that it has no accepted medical use. It's just so I mean, it's a joke, except for it's not funny,
Right.
I don't have any medical horse in the race, because I don't, I'm not in the case where I'm going to prescribe it or anything like that, but it's just from a common sense point of view, it's not a position that holds. And I have young kids, and one thing I'm concerned about is, like, kids want to know what's true. And if one source is telling them something, and they just know it's not true, and the danger of that is they don't believe, they don't trust any source, because they're aware that this isn't true, and that's why this kind of like this dishonesty of the policy is kind of infantilizing, not only for kids but for the whole nation. That we're supposed to accept that, and what how do we deal with that? Do we just pretend it's not true? Or
So do you feel that with now there's 24 states that have legalized medical use of cannabis, and 4 states now that have legalized it recreationally, and it looks like it's on the ballot in November here in California, and it's very likely to pass. Do you feel that the dialogue surrounding the untruths about medical cannabis, or cannabis in general, are about to be more widely revealed?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's already happened. I mean, I feel like the cat is out of the bag, and and especially as we hear about here that it's it's when it's patient driven, like these moms who have kids with these syndromes, you're not going to stop them. The cat is out of the bag. They have an incredible community via the internet. I've experienced this myself with Lyme disease in the community. The healthcare system has sort of failed Lyme disease, and it forces people. This is kind of one of these positive effects, is that it forces people to come together and share information. And with so many of these diseases that we're hearing about here, people have come together, and they're sharing the information, and that cat is out of the bag. And you hear these terrible stories about people having to relocate their families, but those people will not be stopped. And you mentioned 24 states. I mean, New York has a law, but it really is not. I mean, for a very small group, it will help, but it's not going to. It's for most people, they're still going to be forced to find an extra legal means. But in general, I feel like the climate of paranoia has come down, and that the more states that are legal and medicinal, the more it is just kind of getting out there. And
we now have it as a part of the dialogue, even of the presidential race. There's candidates that are coming out and actually talking about if they're for or against it, or in what level of support that they would lend. And so even I suppose that's progress, given that it was probably mostly absent in the last major presidential election that we had. It's interesting. It sounds like you've also, I mean, you're a true artist in almost every discipline. And I think it's very interesting that as a perspective as a parent, though, as well, you want to raise healthy, well-adjusted, creative children that can go on to be contributing members to society and whatnot. So, as your perspective from a parenting perspective, and I love the fact you touched on something I think is very real. Parents, and probably particularly moms, are going to lead a fight. They're not, like you said, there's that natural mother bear instinct,
Right.
and they're going to get what is necessary
Right.
for their family, their children, that kind of thing. So, as a dad, how old are your children now?
My daughter's about to turn 16, and my son is just turned 12.
So it's an age of awareness as well. So would you
Right.
rather, I mean, obviously even a 12-year-old is being potentially exposed to drinking and drugs at that age, and certainly high school age. How do you approach that conversation with your children?
That's, it's really complicated, and it's sort of been on one level it's sort of been don't ask, don't tell, but on another level,
Right.
they know. We've dragged them to conferences, and
Right.
they've been in these crowds of
Right.
people at psychedelic conferences and cannabis patients conferences, and they see the books that Julie has done. So,
Right.
they've sort of grown up knowing that that cannabis isn't just
Right.
like they're teaching them. They get these little books
Right.
about marijuana and the dangers in school, and that's where. They're in a position where I don't think they're subject to the myths. I mean, they
Right.
sort of know the reality much more, and of course we're much more fearful about alcohol. 'Cause
Sure.
my daughter's just at an age when she's starting to go to parties and she's starting to get into cars with 17-year-old boys
Right.
who can drive, and I much more see the risks of endemic alcohol culture.
Absolutely.
And that that there's like this grown-up thing about going to a party and getting drunk and
Yep.
throwing up. It's like this rite of passage.
When you think about it, the 21st birthday is always celebrated, often with the parents present, and it's, oh, you're celebrating taking your first drink.
Right.
And it is sobering, no pun intended, the statistics that absolutely
Right.
show that alcohol and other drugs that young people are introduced are far more harmful
Yeah,
long-term
that's
and
really
short-term effects.
what we're afraid of. I mean, we live in a town with a lot of windy roads, and you have to drive everywhere, and that's every year or so there's a kid, high school kid who dies
Right.
in a car because they're drunk,
Right.
and that is that's the really hard thing for us to teach and be confident about. And now the screens, the phones
Right.
are as dangerous an aspect of their life
Say, is
too.
being distracted and
Right,
being,
and they,
yeah.
like being unconscious of the use of it or whatever. I mean,
Yes.
and I, this is another whole area that I can get in, I've gotten into with the addictive quality of the small screens and
Very true.
and
And
you know,
hope our
the
Facebook
direct.
watchers right now are addicted to their screens. But other
Right.
than that, after
Well,
this,
there's-
no more.
Well, there's positive aspects to it, but what it's all about awareness and consciousness of, awareness of how many times you feel the urge to check it, or that you're bending down, or that you're,
Right.
there's a generation of kids, who were bent over because of
Right.
screens, and
Right.
it's like a physiological effect as well as these other risks, and certainly cannabis, which has been around for thousands of years and has been studied, and they've NIDA and a lot of the other powers that be have been trying to find negative things
Right.
for decades, and there really isn't a lot that they can come up with. And I mentioned this fascinating British study of cannabis in India that was done at the end of the 1800s, and it's like the most thorough examination of cannabis in history, and they really couldn't come up with anything that was too risky.
It's very
involved with
interesting. We spoke to a nurse that was attending the conference here this week, and one of the comments that she made was that, exactly to your point, specifically in the United States government, they're spending an awful lot of energy and money in trying to find the fallacies and the dangerous aspects of
Right.
cannabis, instead of the flip side, trying to put those dollars in research toward the benefits and the ways that it can be used to help and heal our citizens. So
But when
you've
you come-
probably heard of the national, the Moonshot Cancer Moonshot Initiative. So obviously, because cannabis is still illegal at the federal level, it's not being given the federal funding for research. How do you feel about that? They're looking for people to contribute and to put in their ideas as to what kind of research should be included.
You know, you come to a conference like this, and there, you know, you see the people like Dustin Sulek who are doing, you know, such great hard scientific work, and you know, analyzing everything, and having these huge clinical populations that they're judging from, and they're just, you know, everywhere they look, they're finding benefits.
Right.
So there clearly are benefits. I mean, the states have decided it. That there's no reason to not have open research, and that's the only thing that I really want is the chance for it to be studied better. And you know, I'm not someone who's going to say there's no downside. You know, I've been around plenty of people who smoke too much pot, or people, you know, who smoke and cough. You know, like they shouldn't be smoking that much, and kids can get lost in a world of too much use at a young age. But that information needs to be dealt with honestly, and if they're not getting the full message, then they don't take the message in at all, and it doesn't communicate, and there is a risk, you know, and I want the kids to know the real risks, and you know, and that there is a possibility for danger and abuse, but they won't take that message in if they don't feel like they're getting honest information about the big picture.
So obviously then the tagline sort of for this weekend's conference was the truth, the science. And I think you've touched on that beautifully, that really, you know, nothing is ever without its pros and its cons. And it sounds like, you know, you, like so many other citizens, are just looking for the truth and wanting that opportunity.
And the science is so fascinating. I mean, you know, it's some of it is hard for me to take in as a layperson because it's complicated, but the parts that I get, you know, it's really fascinating, and it reveals really interesting things, and it will have important scientific benefits for communities, you know, that have nothing to do with cannabis, and has nothing to do with being stoned or anything like that. And then, you know, that's what we're hearing again and again out there. So you know, they're just, you know, research, you know, that's what America is good at, and we have these scientists, and we have, you know, the other thing that's really reassuring to me is when I come to places like this is you know, how serious the younger people who are coming up, who are in college or you know, going on to higher degrees, that are interested in this field, and how dedicated and intelligent and focused they are, and how you know, what a change that is from the. It
could change the landscape of who we are as a nation if we were allowed the opportunity to really.
And we will be, because they're out there, and they're doing the work, and everything's going in that direction, and the cat's out of the bag, and it's not going back in. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here, and
pleasure.
thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.